How did a small island nation become the ruler of a quarter of the world's land and people? Our story begins in the age of exploration, where Britain, this tiny speck on the map, started to etch its name across the globe. It was a time of discovery, of new horizons, and of bold voyages into the unknown. In the midst of this era, a significant turning point occurred, the establishment of the East India Company. This was no ordinary corporation like we know it today. It was a force of commerce and conquest, a key player in the game of empires, and it would become the springboard for Britain's dominion over territories across India and beyond. The sails were set, the compass pointed east, and the British Empire began to take shape, fueled by the promise of trade and the allure of power. And thus, the stage was set for the rise of the largest empire in history. At its peak, the British Empire was a titan unmatched in size and influence. A colossal entity, it spread its wings over vast territories, reaching the far corners of the globe. From the arid landscapes of Africa to the icy wilderness of Canada, the sun-baked plains of Australia to the bustling streets of India, the British Empire held sway. Its dominion extended over almost a quarter of the world's landmass, making it the largest empire in history. This vast empire was a mosaic of diverse cultures, traditions, and languages. It wasn't merely a political entity, but a complex tapestry of human societies, each with its unique heritage and identity. It was said that the sun never set on the British Empire, a phrase that captured the sheer breadth of its global reach, its omnipresence across time zones. Key territories like India, known as the jewel in the crown, contributed immensely to the empire's wealth and prestige. The fertile lands of the Nile Delta in Egypt, the bustling ports of Hong Kong, the rich mines of South Africa, the expansive farms of Australia, the strategic waterways of the Suez Canal and the Gibraltar Strait, all played crucial roles in the empire's narrative. The empire was more than just a geographical entity. It was a powerhouse of economic and political influence. The control of strategic locations and trade routes facilitated Britain's rise as an unparalleled superpower. The empire's reach was not limited to land alone. Its naval prowess was unmatched, its ships ruling the waves, connecting its far-flung colonies and asserting its dominance over the world's oceans. But it wasn't just about territorial conquests and economic gains. The empire left its indelible mark on the cultures, languages and institutions of the lands it ruled. From English common law to the sport of cricket, the British influence seeped into the fabric of societies far and wide. The British Empire, in its glory, was an unparalleled superpower. Its legacy, however, is a complex tapestry of enlightenment and exploitation, the repercussions of which continue to echo through the annals of history. What drove this relentless expansion and dominance, one may wonder? The answer lies in the strategic control of locations and trade routes that the British Empire maintained. This control was not merely a matter of geography, but a complex web spun with the threads of economics, politics and military might. Imagine a world map as a giant chessboard. The British Empire, the Grand Master, strategically positioned its pieces across the globe. These pieces were not just territories or colonies, but also crucial sea routes and ports. They controlled the lucrative spice trade from the East Indies, the opium trade with China, and the slave trade from Africa. This strategy was not just about acquiring wealth, but also about ensuring that the wheels of the British economic engine never stopped turning. The colonies supplied raw materials to fuel the Industrial Revolution back home. Cotton from India, sugar from the West Indies, gold from Australia, and countless other resources flowed into Britain, transforming it into the world's leading industrial and trading nation. But the empire's dominance was not solely economic. The strategic locations under its control also offered political and military advantages. The Suez Canal, for example, was a vital link to India, the jewel in the crown of the empire. Control of this canal meant quicker communication and transport between Britain and its most prized possession. The British Empire's military prowess was another significant factor. Formidable naval power allowed Britain to protect its trade routes and colonies. It could exert influence, suppress rebellions, and defend its territorial claims against rival empires. With its disciplined armies and advanced weaponry, Britain was a force to be reckoned with on the world stage. So, in essence, the British Empire was not just a collection of territories scattered across the globe. It was a meticulously designed network that leveraged strategic control of locations and trade routes to assert economic, political, and military dominance. The empire was a well-oiled machine driven by strategic control and power. But the empire's rise was not without its dark side. This was particularly evident in the manner in which the British Empire dealt with indigenous cultures and traditions. As the empire spread its wings, it often cast a long, ominous shadow on the cultural tapestry of the regions under its control. This was a shadow that in many instances sought to suppress the vibrant hues of local customs, languages and practices. The British Empire, in its mission to consolidate power, often adopted a strategy known as divide and rule. This tactic involved pitting local communities against each other, fostering animosity and discord. By creating divisions based on ethnicity, religion or class, the empire ensured that unity among the colonized was fractured, making them easier to govern. In India, for instance, the British authorities exacerbated Hindu-Muslim tensions, sowing seeds of distrust that would later erupt into bloody conflicts. In Africa, arbitrary borders drawn by the British often split ethnic groups, leading to tribal tensions that reverberate to this day. But it wasn't just about political maneuvering. The empire's cultural hegemony was also pervasive. Native languages were often sidelined in favour of English. Local customs and traditions were deemed backward or primitive, and were systematically replaced with civilised British norms. The empire's educational institutions, while providing access to knowledge, primarily served as tools for cultural indoctrination. This cultural suppression had profound effects. It led to the loss of indigenous knowledge systems, eroded cultural diversity, and left deep psychological scars on the colonized peoples. Many of these effects continue to be felt today in the form of identity crises and societal conflicts. The empire's shadow stretched far, often obscuring the cultures and traditions of those under its rule. Indeed, while the British Empire brought about significant changes, it's crucial to remember that these changes were often steeped in shadows that continue to darken the pages of history. The empire, a double-edged sword, gave as it took away. Indeed, the empire's influence was an intricate dance of give and take. It introduced a wealth of infrastructure, technology, medicine, education, sports and culture to its colonies. Railroads, bridges and ports sprouted across the globe, connecting cities and towns in ways that were previously unimaginable. The empire's thirst for innovation led to technological advancements that revolutionized industries and transformed lives. From the steam engine to the telegraph, the empire was a cradle of invention. In the realm of medicine, the empire's contributions were significant. It was within the empire's crucible that scientific breakthroughs such as the discovery of antibiotics were made. Education, often seen as a privilege of the elite, was extended to the masses. Schools were established, literacy rates improved, and a generation of scholars was born. Sports like cricket and football found their way into the hearts of colonies, becoming an integral part of their cultural fabric. However, while the empire gifted, it also scarred. The riches that fueled its prosperity were often extracted at a grave cost. The scramble for resources led to environmental degradation on an unprecedented scale. Forests were felled, rivers polluted, and wildlife decimated. The empire's economic policies sowed the seeds of inequality and poverty, with wealth concentrated in the hands of a few. Colonies were stripped of their resources, their economies left in shambles. Indigenous communities were marginalized, their lands taken, their cultures suppressed. The empire's divide and rule policy exacerbated ethnic tensions, sowing discord that still echoes today. The sun began to set on the British Empire in the 20th century. The winds of change began to blow, and the seeds of dissent, sown over centuries of British rule, started to bear fruit. Anti-colonial movements began to rise, like a tide against the shore, challenging the sovereignty of the empire that had held sway over vast territories and peoples. Across India, Africa and the Caribbean, the call for freedom echoed. The empire that had once seemed invincible was now confronting the fight for independence from its colonies. The battle was not just against the physical presence of the British, but also against the ideological constructs of colonialism. Nations were not just striving for political autonomy, they were also seeking to reclaim their cultural identities, their traditions, their heritage, which had been stifled under the yoke of British rule. In India, the jewel in the British crown, the struggle was led by figures like Mahatma Gandhi, whose philosophy of non-violence and civil disobedience resonated worldwide. The fight for independence, marked by both peaceful protests and fierce confrontations, eventually culminated in India reclaiming its freedom in the mid-20th century. Elsewhere, in African nations like Kenya and Ghana, the fight was equally intense. The Mau Mau uprising in Kenya and Ghana's peaceful transition to independence signified the changing times. The British Empire, once a formidable force, was gradually receding. It was not a sudden collapse, but rather a protracted sunset that spanned decades. The empire, which had once boasted of its expanse where the sun never set, was now witnessing twilight in its colonies. The territories that had been under British rule were now emerging as independent nations, each with its unique journey, its distinct identity. By the latter half of the 20th century, the empire had largely dissolved. The sun had set, leaving behind a world drastically altered by its influence. The British Empire, an era of enlightenment or exploitation. This question, profound and contentious, continues to spark debate among historians, scholars, and those whose lives were shaped by the empire's reign. The legacy of the British Empire is one of paradoxes, a tapestry woven with threads of progress and threads of oppression. On one hand, the empire's contributions to the world are undeniable. It pioneered advancements in infrastructure, technology, medicine and education. It introduced sports that are beloved worldwide today, such as cricket and football. Its cultural influence, from literature to music, has enriched the global stage. Yet, on the other hand, the empire's legacy is also etched with the scars of exploitation. The suppression of indigenous cultures, the exacerbation of ethnic conflicts through divide-and-rule tactics, and the imposition of alien laws and customs often disrupted the social fabric of the colonized societies. Many territories still grapple with the lingering effects of these policies, including entrenched poverty, inequality, and environmental damage. The empire's influence extended far beyond its geopolitical boundaries. The English language, the world's lingua franca, is perhaps the most enduring symbol of the empire's reach. The Commonwealth of Nations, a political association of 54 member states, the majority of which were territories of the former British Empire, also stands as a testament to the empire's enduring influence. Yet, the legacy of the British Empire is not solely defined by its past actions. It is also shaped by how we choose to remember and interpret those actions. The empire's history is a narrative of power and resistance, of conquest and liberation, of domination and resilience. It is a narrative that continues to evolve, shaped by the perspectives and voices of those who have inherited its legacy. So, was the British Empire an era of enlightenment or exploitation? Perhaps it was both. Perhaps it was neither. The British Empire, a tale of power, progress and exploitation. An intricate narrative that unfolded over centuries, its origins steeped in the age of exploration. It expanded to become the largest empire in history. A behemoth that spanned almost a quarter of the world's landmass and population at its zenith. A strategic mastermind, it controlled pivotal locations and trade routes, resulting in an unparalleled rise to economic, political and military supremacy. Yet its rule was not without shadows. Indigenous cultures suppressed, ethnic conflicts exacerbated, the empire's tactics often sowed seeds of discord. It bequeathed technological advancements, medical breakthroughs and cultural contributions, but also left scars of poverty, inequality and environmental damage. The sun set on the empire in the 20th century under the weight of anti-colonial movements. A complex legacy of enlightened progress and exploitation remains, continuing to shape our world. The empire may have fallen, but its echoes still reverberate through the annals of history, further reminding us that the past was the worst,